From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where this morning we patriotically turned our clocks back 1 hour to help our boys defeat Kaiser Bill and the Huns. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. Welcome to the Blast Radius. I'm your faithful correspondent and humble servant. And here is your Decline of Western Civilization News Roundup for the work week ending Friday, 3 November 2023. Dateline Kathmandu, Monday, 30 October. UN Secretary General and noted wild-eyed climate alarmist Antonio Guterres visited Nepal this week, which is, let's face it, just about the last place on Earth that needs to concern itself with catastrophic sea level rise, and used the opportunity to do the only thing he apparently knows how to do, namely blubber a bunch of nonsense about climate change. Quote, "The rooftops of the world are caving in. Glaciers are icy reservoirs. The ones here in the Himalayas supply fresh water to well over 1 billion people. When they shrink, so do river flows. I am here today to cry out from the rooftop of the world, stop the madness. The glaciers are retreating, but we cannot. We must end the fossil fuel age." End quote. Asked how many tons of emissions were produced by the private jet that flew him and his entourage to Nepal so he could sanctimoniously decry the use of fossil fuels, Secretary General Guterres replied, Lo siento, pero no comprendo inglés. End quote. Dateline Londonistan, Emirate of Great Britain, Tuesday, 31 October. The London Metropolitan Police, a former law enforcement organization, sparked widespread public outrage this week after several of the department's officers were observed tearing down missing person posters depicting Israeli civilians kidnapped by Hamas terrorists. The officers were filmed tearing down the posters outside the Cullimore Chemist Shop in Edgware, North London, which incidentally is a neighborhood with a rather sizable Jewish population. According to a revoltingly mealy-mouthed statement from a department spokesperson, the officers were instructed to tear down the flyers so as to, quote, stop issues escalating and to avoid community tension. Does it get worse? Oh, yes. Much worse, in fact. From the same shameful statement, quote, we have no wish to limit the rights of anyone to protest or to raise awareness of the plight of those kidnapped and the terrible impact on their families. But we do have a responsibility to take reasonable steps to stop issues escalating and to avoid any further increase in community tension. On this occasion, that is what these officers were trying to do. End quote. Now, I'm no fancy law enforcement professional, ladies and gentlemen, but it seems to this reporter that if your city has people in it who can be driven to spasmodic orgies of homicidal rage by posters of missing children, that might be your actual law enforcement problem. But what the hell do I know anyway? Dateline Washington, Wednesday, 1 November. In a bold and courageous move designed to forestall the rising tide of anti-Semitism exploding on university campuses from sea to shining sea, President and semi-animated cadaver Joe Biden is calling in the cavalry by appointing Vice President Kamala Harris to be in charge of ending Islamophobia? Am I reading this correctly, Jim Eagle, or is the staff playing another prank? It's real, and you're certain of that? I'll take your word for it. The President of the United States says he wants to end anti-Semitism by curing Islamophobia. I only believe it because the President is Joe Biden, though. It's a creative problem-solving strategy, to be sure. It's rather like telling someone the best cure for alcoholism is drinking a bunch more vodka, or that you can fix gonorrhea by having unprotected sex with lots of hookers. But the possibility remains, it has to be said, that this reporter is just being unduly skeptical about this whole thing. After all, who can argue with the smashing success that the vice president, the California cackler herself, has had with the other assignments she's been given? First, she was sent to fix the border, and she spent 25 minutes at the El Paso airport, and it was fixed, just like magic. There hasn't been a single illegal alien since. It's been wonderful. And what was the next thing she was put in charge of after everybody on her staff quit because they couldn't stand working for her? Oh, right. She was put in charge of voting rights, whatever that means. And then her whole staff quit again for some reason. And she wasn't seen for months, it seemed like. And then she was put in charge of reproductive rights. whatever that means. And then her whole staff quit again for a third time, so I'm sure she has got a top flight group of people around her now to help stop anti-Semitism by making sure nobody makes jokes about Muslims. We're all pulling for you, Madam Vice President. I'm sure it's going to work out great. Dateline Chicago, Thursday, 2 November. From the You're Not Surprised by This, and I'm Not Either desk comes the following. The most dominant women's amateur cyclist in the greater Chicagoland area is 6'2", with a magnificent penis and testicles, and was a below average male cyclist up until approximately 5 minutes ago. Michael Thompson, whose woman-faced minstrel stage name is Tessa Johnson, or Thompson, whichever one it is, who knows, joined the Chicago Cyclocross Cup circuit in December of last year and has since taken first place in 8 of the 10 events that he's entered. What happened in the other 2 races? Unclear. But it begs a question that I would also be fascinated to ask Will Tomless, the woman-faced minstrel swimmer from Penn, because he also, in a precious few cases, despite being a big, gigantic, hulking dude, managed to lose races to actual female swimmers. So what happened? Were they intentional losses? Because even the fraudsters themselves have to acknowledge it makes a mockery of the whole thing if they win every single race, so they have to occasionally drop one for the sake of appearances? Or is the explanation actually more innocent than that? Could it be that you're just such an impossibly shitty male swimmer or male bicycle racer, as the case may be, that you actually, improbably, against all the odds, really did manage to lose to a girl? Despite being a big hulking dude with all the seemingly insurmountable physiological advantages that status confers? And then there's the bigger, even more important question. On the days you lost to a girl, whether inadvertently or not, did that cause you to swing your dick around the ladies' locker room with a bit less gusto afterward than you would normally? Inquiring minds want to know, and we'll stay on this story until we get to the bottom of it. Or the top of it. No judgment here. Dateline, Gatesville, Texas, Friday, 3 November. A rural Texas hospital 2 hours outside of Austin is set to become the first location in a series of what are being called safe haven boxes, where at-risk mothers can surrender their newborn infants without fear of legal recrimination. Dr. Jeff Bates, Chief Medical Officer at Coriel Health and co-founder of the local nonprofit that organized the funding for the installation of said boxes, said the following, quote, "The woman can walk away and abandon her baby without prosecution, and the baby will be safer. My hope is that no one ever has to put a baby in this box. I hope that people will see the box and begin to talk about this issue in the community," end quote. The program attempted to run a first initial trial back in 2020, but things turned chaotic on election night when Democrat Party operatives kept showing up trying to jam stacks of ballots into the baby box, which necessitated a return to the drawing board and a total redesign of the program. But hey, these things happen. Ballot box, baby box, they sound kind of familiar. Me, I just hope they got that water main in Atlanta fixed. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is your Decline of Western Civilization News Roundup for today, Sunday, 5 November, 2023. I thank you for your kind attention, and I send it back to my distinguished co-host, your friend and mine, the one, the only, the inimitable, Mr. Caucasian Sasquatch.